Oh, okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay, before we start, I want to do roll call first. SMA Negeri 3 Samarinda Tim A.
We're here, we're complete.
Okay. SMA Negeri 1 Samarinda Tim B.
My teammate is still in the bathroom.
Okay.
May I go to the bathroom also?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
SMA Negeri 1 Samarinda Tim A.
Okay.
Okay. And the last one is SMA Negeri 2 Tenggarong Seberang Tim A. Okay, first let me introduce the debate. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the grand final of English debate. I am Anissa Nuraini as the chairperson and the timekeeper. Okay, the motion for this debate is: this House believes that Indonesian coverage of Dutch colonial history must shift its focus from referring hero and independence effort into that of clinical discourse on copyright evil. First, let me introduce the debaters. Acting as opening government for this debate is the team from SMA Negeri 3 Samarinda, Team A, with Ms. Kirania Nazwa Raihani as the first speaker, Mr. Muhammad Junior Zain as the second speaker. Acting as opening opposition for this debate is the team from SMA Negeri 1 Samarinda, Team B, with Ms. Jetsiana as the first speaker, Ms. Fiona as the second speaker. Acting as the closing government for this debate is the team from SMA Negeri 1 Samarinda, Team A, with Mr. Moza Nugraha as the first speaker, Ms. Naira Damaris Putri Nugroho as the second speaker. Acting as the closing opposition for this debate is the team from SMA Negeri 2 Tenggarong Seberang, Team A, with Ms. Marcella Adita Putri as the first speaker, Ms. Debbie Sanggam Laurena Baban as second speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, now I'd like to introduce the adjudicators for this debate. The first adjudicator is Mr. Zazim. The second adjudicator is Mr. Ahmad Susanto. The third adjudicator is Ms. Yamdianita. The fourth adjudicator is Ms. Alfarai Sabrina. And the fifth adjudicator is Ms. Fabiani. I'm sorry, ma'am or sir. Should I explain the regulation first or we can start now? Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
I think we can start the debate.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sorry, sir. My mistake. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now to begin the debate, I would like to invite the first speaker of the opening government. Ms. Kirania, time is yours.
Please wait a moment. My teammate is changing rooms since he has to change the rooms for his camera setup.
Excuse me, Kak, I have to change my room since I actually kayak lagi di luar kota. But if you want to proceed to Kira, it's okay. I'll do it kayak because I am walking. I'm sure it will be really uncomfortable turning my camera on while I'm on the corridor. Is it all right?
It's gonna take
Yes.
long for you to change room.
It's about 10 to 15 minutes, I guess, Kak.
Oh my God.
Okay, I think we
it's
can.
okay to
I think we can
proceed.
start to Kire.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can. Too long.
Yes, yes.
I'm
That is
sorry.
why.
Okay.
Wait a minute, tunggu.
Recording
Kalau
stop.
kamu change waktu dalam waktu 5-10 menit, sempat nggak kembali sebelum waktunya kamu berbicara?
Recording in progress.
Masih sempat, Kak, masih sempat.
Okay.
I think you need to hurry, Zain.
Yes, I am, miss.
Please.
So sorry.
Okay. May I proceed with my speech then? Chair?
Yes,
I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Having to remember every national event, whether it is our precious 17 Agustus tahun 45, Ambarawa, Bandung Lautan Api, G30 SPKI, Hotel Orange, you name it, captures a picture on how this nation, this country is formed, is created, is made. We pay our dearest gratitude for the heroes for letting intruder interfering our country, but we say having to know all of this focus only on the lenses of Merdeka fighting all the intruders with bambu runcing is not enough. It is not efficient. It is not going to reform anything rather than random netizens or foreigners stating Indonesia sucks on Twitter. Should I recall Kristen Gray's case in Bali, where she's being that dismissive in regards to the gentrification of our locals, of our people. We say it is not retrospective. You cannot tackle that only by patriots and memorizing the events of the heroes taking over with their guerrilla warfare, utilizing our bamboo spears to fight the Londo. We don't think so. Opening government are aware that we need to reform and plan a route that's going to sustain the future livelihood of our land, our people as a whole. And to do that, we need to know the history of why corporations are putting taxes, where and when does that came from. We are clearly aware this is a collective benefit that's going to save the people of Indonesia. Opening government. stand tall on this debate. 3 areas in my speech. First, where the OG walks. Second, what we demand. But thirdly, how OG's cases are going to resolve current and future problems that will occur in advance. So, what are our models? Firstly, we want to establish a world where students will become close conscious towards their surroundings by clearly examining the problems related by the origin of the problem within the same from that happened in the past. How does this illustrate panels? Let's take a parallel example on scientific approach. Let's see physicists doing quantums. Beforehand, they should know the things that applies to them, their components, where do they came from. This is crucial to know the step-by-step process and resolution when they are obstacles within the problems, right? Let's put this in the glass of our what are OG stances. Firstly, our stances is that we want to shift all those referent heroes and independence efforts scope to inherently focus on clinical discourse of the country. Simple logical reasoning. The focus on revering hero and independence effort that's being injected to the people is that hamper to the most people's character as being too patriotic and populist in regards of glorifying the hero's achievements. It is bad as it only ties up emotional connections. You think that they are patriotic because they sacrifice this body for our land. In regards, this does not discharge the respect that we have to pay for those heroes in advance. So, and then the second thing is that we lessen the dogma of having to put in an excessive amount of respect in comparison. We uprise the awareness of people to profoundly tackle problems like land taxes and such. Pretty much, we will be preventive towards ending this power holds existing. The second thing is that the characterization and farming. We all know that in schools, your subjects of learning in Dutch colonialism history is more cited to hero stories and their goody behaviors within their adventures that we have to follow and learn, in which those are the most basic virtues that anyone could ever learn, even in nursery rhymes, with the examples of those virtues implemented in an old irrelevant war the heroes had when colonialism in Indonesia still exists, and then proceed to be able to be taken out of context as if glorifying a certain aspect of basic virtue would change or improve the problem we have today. The second thing is that corporate evil are what's left from our excruciating pain of having independence. Even until now, they have the tiniest bit of control over our land. What's independence without whole body freedom? And then thirdly, under our side, we compile those textbooks to study the cost and history on for instances. Raffles land renting system that occurs on colonial times. This is going to be good since like most private corporation and such will refer to the laws or past occurrence that happened beforehand of different colonial times. Now, I'm going to my arguments. First of all, is the relevance in today's cases. As what I stated to you in my speech, which issues are more relevant? We think this urgent enough to say that people are fighting over lands within corporation that violates the people's ownership within that land. It's already enough to picturize that it is urgent. People should learn how to handle fighting over land ownerships, rights, and such. Sometimes those who know it are those who study laws, but sometimes some of them are paid anyway by the corporation to walk on their path for profit only. The case of our remembering our old good times, we are so patriotic and righteous. While yes, it is good that we acknowledge the fight of our people back then, we are unaware of the still continuing fights until now. Cases of influence from our colonization days are still hurting our people by the example of our people still fighting for the right on their land, because now it is being controlled by the remains of colonialism as acting as corporations. And yet the history teachers are acting as if those days are past and we all great now, and they just have the little bit of the badness of we have today and didn't learn anything about how exactly they have control over us so that we can fight back and be the actual heroes of today's world and not just break virtues and greatness of back then. The second thing, what will change? By studying clinical approach on the discourse of corporate evil, we will be able to know the spots and lines of actually of what is actually they are doing to our country, rather than being always proud, Indonesia is the best, fight with them with virtues and kindness, being overly patriotic and populist by the fight that we didn't do will just make you like those over proud nation users on the internet. We say it is a great benefit to dissect and review on how the corporate evil were back then. They're a trade company and are with clinical approach, no matter if what they are doing is bad, hurting, learning them is the pivotal point on what's going to change in our effort to make a better environment for our people. Yes, we don't care. We highlight the bad more, and we don't put sentiment in what's happened or happening by the what is going on in there, because it's those that will actually use to fight back, aka will backfire corporates and build a critical mind of our youth that can access actual data and facts and then make a counterplay to it. At the end of the day, as the government, we will have youths that aren't basing their proudness of Indonesia based on the over-patriotic behaviors, based on the effort and feats of past heroes, and actually able to dissect and make actual opinion statements out of the knowledge of the clinical discourse that we are giving them in school. Thank you very much. We are proud to propose.
Time spent by the first speaker of the opening government is 7 minutes 34 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes 34 seconds. To oppose the case from the government, let us invite the first speaker of the opening opposition. Ms. Jetsiana, time is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Azannya kedengaran kan? Azannya kedengaran Kakak?
Enggak.
Okay.
Oh, azannya enggak.
Okay, wait. Okay.
Wait a minute, yeah. I think we lost Zain
Okay.
from SMA 3.
Agak
After this is 2. I think you can proceed. We have Zain already.
Hello, I'm back. Please
Thank you.
discontinue the debate. Thank you so much.
Okay,
So sorry, so sorry.
okay. It's okay. Okay, thank you. Starting my speech. Okay, starting my speech in three. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, histories are created by the ones who win the fight, right? We say the moment Indonesia declared their independence, they have created a full book of the history of their effort and fight in it. It isn't wrong to put their own point of view to and tell their people from a certain view. And we say that Indonesia, it is the right of Indonesia to put their point of view to tell their own people about their history, right? Opposition, we heard the opposition being dismissive about the fact that histories are only written in only one book, right? We say, when they say that, oh, we need to learn about this corporate evil so that we can avoid these things in the future, right? We say we say that this is counterproductive, right? You can only use this as a future reference because it has different pattern, right? Globalization happens, and the past form of corporate evil patterns are different from the past and the future later on, right? Even better, we say that even better under the side of our house, the spirit of the nation that we have gained through learning about how we gain independence is going to be used because so that we can fight this kind of corporate evil in the future, right? And second responses towards their argument about this that we need to learn to avoid, right? Second responses, even if they still want to know about the corporate evil, even if they still want to know about the history of it, we say history is not only made in one book only, right? In only Indonesia perspective, right? We say there are outside historians who already tell this, who already wrote the story from natural proof, or even the Dutch itself. They must not thank you. They must have written their own history in their own foot, right? If they proposition bench want to say that people, there are people who want to know, therefore they want to learn. We say that no, because histories are there are books of histories out there. There are written from different proof. They are from natural POV proof, for example, or even the proof from Dutch itself. Therefore, this argument cannot be validated anymore. The main point that I'm going to bring in this debate is that the interest of Indonesia itself under two layers. First, the dignity, and second, development or progression itself, right? First layer, the dignity. We say that by learning the we say that by focusing it on from revering hero and independence, we say that we give the credit to the hero itself. Imagine like hundreds or thousands of heroes of our own people have died from these happenings, right? We say that we give those families and no thank you. We give those people that have died because of this. We give in the remembrance of thousands of people who have died because of that, right? Even if proposition bench don't see this as enough benefit for this debate, we say under second layer.
Point of clarification.
No, thank you. Under second layer for development and progression, we say that we bring incentive for the nation to keep the spirit that our heroes did for independence, right? We say that our people learn. We say that because of this, our people have the mindset to form a revolution and not oppressed by the current status quo that oppressed them. They will fight as hard as they can, to gain their own good, right? This cannot be gained from the proposition bench because when you focus only on on clinical discourse on corporate evil. This means that there is no. This means that there is no nation proof in it, how they gain their own independence, how these heroes gain independence for Indonesia itself. Therefore, people don't have the mindset. People don't have. They don't put any incentive on people to fight for their own justice, right? And also, okay, take an example on Myanmar itself, right?
Point.
No, thank you. We say that example like Myanmar, who actually had their independence with the Dutch itself, right? They have colonized from the Dutch itself. We say that we say in the current status quo, they are once again imperialized by the corporate evil by their own regime, right? Why is this so? Because clearly they don't. They don't focus on revering their hero and tell the stories of how they gain their independence of their own self, right? We say once again this kind of nationalism do not happen under like for countries like Myanmar, and they once again imperialized by the corporate evil by their own regime, right? Under our bench, we say that we are able to keep the incentive of always fighting back, no matter how hard it is, no matter how it takes, right? We say also another example, like from another example on South Korea and China. We see that how they have been colonized by Japan itself, but we see how the characteristic of China and South Korea itself. We say that they are very, very proud of their own of how their story on their independence, right? They are very proud of their heroes fighting back from the colonizers itself, and it brings the dignity to them to trust in their own nation, right? And furthermore, they turn out to be a really, really good nation, right? For all these reasons, I'm so proud to propose. Thank you.
Time spent by the first speaker of the opening opposition is 7 minutes 10 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes 10 seconds. Next, to close the case for the opening government, let us invite the second speaker of the opening government. Mr. Zain, time is yours.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
I'm actually in the lobby, so if you heard some weird background noises, I'm so sorry. My pure preference is to unmuting yourself. Starting my gender pronouns are he, him. Wait, let me start my timer first. Let me drink. I highly suggest you guys do the POI, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I hate seeing the news. I hate to see the news looking over our people, those quote-unquote orang-orang awam, those quote-unquote rakyat kecil that are being weakened by power those corporations hold. Where they're unaware that it's because of the weak root mitigation process that should be preventive and hold accountable by the people, by the rakyat to be prosperous. To be able to gain what is there to be called quote-unquote independence, we say it is enough of learning efforts and the process of Sukarno being kidnapped to Rengas Dengklok, which is not going to be beneficial for the future references that you want to apply under the current status quo. You're not going to get had under yourself the house. Congratulations, Jetsiana. You just let our people go past. What am I going to do in my speech today? 2 areas of speeches. I'm going to talk about basically why under our side of the house, why the shifting and compilation of these people are going to raise the awareness of our people to talk about the tax that is being happened to our society today. But secondly, I'm going to talk about the observations that's going to be applied under this under my prime minister's speech. I'm going to, before going on to my substantive, few responses towards dismissive side, opening opposition case. They told you that we are being dismissive. Notice how are we going to actually become dismissive while we're actually caring about the problem that is happening in the current status quo. People, those rakyat kecil doesn't even know how to like overcome those PT that is taking over their land, right? We think because of like the lack of resources, the lack of studying history and research that is being happening under your side of the house. You're not going to implement this anyhow, any better under your side of the house. You never actually implement how this compilation of these history books, learning about the corporate evil benefits that's going to benefit under your side of the house as well, right? We think this is fairly untrue. We don't think this is going to resolve any better evidence under your side of the house. Secondly, they told you about dignity. How are you going to talk about dignity? This is very untrue, panels. Why? Because they told you how about this dignity is basically taking over the people. How is basically getting overcoming tax fights within the PT is not it's like the PT besar that is taking over your land. It's not going to be counted as dignity. We think this is not going to be even better under your side of the house. We think that the dignity that you try to run this debate is very untrue. Thirdly, they talk about referring their hero. This is untrue again, panels. You said that Myanmar, even in the form of Burma, have already like been overcoming such problems in the past. We don't even think that you're under your side of the house, you're going to even fix this as well. Rather, they talk about heroes in China, the dignity of their nation. Don't you think China has like a socialist state and communism in the very first place? Therefore, they don't actually allow their people to criticize their hero in the very first place. That is why up until today, their people cannot even criticize their own heroes. Therefore, they are being that enforced to believe that their heroes is the one that saved them inherently in the very first place, where there are still many people living in poverty. That is the main problem that should be in focus and being that should focus on your lands in the very first place. Moving on to my extensions, I'm going to integrate furthermore of my responses onto my substantives. First response. First extensions on the point why this is going to raise the awareness. Let's take this debate on this panels. Let's take a parallel example on how laundering system is implemented, like what Raffles have already told you in the history books, for example. We think that this is because of how land taxes are being formed to Indonesia. Do you think people will know how these laws will eventually work just because of the under your side of the house, form of institutionalization that you're doing that dismissive under your side of the house? So we say opening opposition could not cope up with this benefit anyway better under our side of the house because they enforce the history that's being implemented under the books itself to actually like learn history about the implementation of the efforts and the heroes itself, right? They're never actually going to like get the root cause of the problems of why that laundering system will actually happen, why those process of like doing taxes and the tax problems that is being overcome by the rakyat kecil is going to be overcome under your side of the house. Comparatively, under our side of the house, because we implement and compile the focus and we like shift the focus to the lens of like mitigating the process of these rakyat kecil, they will know the history. Oh, this is what is actually happening before in the history. This is what is actually going to happen within the laws that's being implemented under your under these corporations that they had. So they will have better awareness under our side of the house because they know the history between those laws being mitigated, those laws being created. Before going on to my next point, I'm going to take a POI. I'm going to count to 4. Counting once, counting twice, counting thrice. So cool. Moving on to my next point about the observation that is being that dismissive under your side of the house. We say under our side of the house because we do care about our people. That is why we think that we should actually revise the history books that is being applied to our people. Even though that I actually like being in an apartment right now, even though with this poor connection, we think that we think that under our side of the house, we're going to like implement these like better notebooks, like what my better history books, like what my PM have already told you. My PM literally told you in her speech that under our side of the house, we want to establish a world where students will become close conscious, note the close conscious word, towards their surroundings by clearly examining the problems related by the origin of the problem within the same form that happened in the past. She literally illustrated to you, let's say like a parallel example on scientific approach. Let's say how those physicists are like doing quantums beforehand. They should know the things that applies to them, their components, where do they came from. This is crucial. This is going to be applicable if you're going to like study the London system that's being applied to like Raffles, for example, those Lande-like stem cells that is being like opposed in the history books in the very first place. We said that under your side of the house, they're not going to get any better. They're not going to fix the laws. They're not going to raise any awareness of the people. Rather, they're just going to like put glorifications of your heroes, the process that is going to ensure on the outputs of your system. We said this is very inefficient as you're not going to resolve future outcomes that is being demanded in the future, right? We say panels under our side of the house, we care about the future likelihood of our nations. We actually like take control upon the future future chances of how, like, for example, tax is going to happen, tax is going to be implemented. My mother studied law. I think that my mother already pretty know what pretty knows what is going to happen within the laws, what is the history that happens. But because of like the lack of education being implemented to what the school has already told you, they never actually like acknowledge how these laws will actually be mitigated, right? To actually know and acknowledge about the law, you need to actually know about the history between how these laws is being created. That is why under Hours of the House, we acknowledge that you need to actually mitigate this. We give you several establishments, several stances under Hours of the House. Well, clearly, O never actually give you a clear establishment on how they will like establish their stances in the very first place. We say under Hours of the House because we acknowledge the main purpose of our people to be quote unquote independent, to be quote unquote like, for example, quote unquote prosperous. We say we're going to sustain this. To sustain that, you need to study. To study, you need research. You need to have evidences. Then to gain that evidences, that is only existing under our side of the house because it's not being that in-depth and it's still not going to like going injected under your side of the house. But if you do think that we need to pay respect to our heroes, for example, you're not going to, under our side of the house, it won't let go anyhow. It's still there. But the main focus is just to tackle the thing that happens in the future. So therefore, under our side of the house, the education that you're studying today, the one that you're studying today, is not going to be about the past, but going to be about the future. That is the future likelihood that we demanded under our side of the house. We clearly prove to you, we're very proud to propose.
I'm sorry, time spent by the second speaker of the opening government is 7 minutes 25 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes 25 seconds. Next, to close the case for the opening opposition, please welcome the second speaker opening opposition, Ms. Fiona. Time is yours.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Oh, am I audible?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Gender pronouns are she, her, they, them, he, him. I don't mind. POI preference, just type in the chat or like raise your hand. And yeah, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. When Jojo, the PM of opening government, said that we need to study for the future, we're not going to study for the past because this is also for future. They dismissed the fact that the motion literally said the coverage of the Dutch colonialism. Like, we're talking about the past, we're learning about history. I don't think there's any process analysis coming from them as an alternative or any solution for them to say, oh, we have a way of, you know, understanding and criticize what happened in the past and having a discourse when there isn't like any explanation on how this correlates into the future whatsoever, right? What we gain from their PM is that they're trying to say is that, when we actually learn the process analysis and having discourse without any sentiment or no emotion or bias, we say that they're trying to say that, oh, when you learn of things and learn them from the root of the problem, you're able to solve that. But then multiple responses towards a side of the bench, opening government bench, right? Their DPN tried to came in this debate and say like, oh, I really hate seeing the news when I see like rakyat kecil are being so oppressed and not giving and not getting any justice at all, right? We say under our side of the house, exactly what the things that bring these kind of justice and bring protests are when we have this incentive and spirit coming in the first place. It is rooted in our soul as Indonesians that we will do anything no matter what to gain getting what we want, right? Look at how our people these days still do have the spirit on fighting back, because we take dignity of our heroes, right? When there's inequality happening within the nation, even in our nation, where our people do actually do protest, that's already enough of enough proof to you, right? When this is a progression for like a justice, right? This means it's enough proof of progress of justice, right? We say that when omnibus law happened, there's a massive protest. When there's also KPK, for example, there is already clear proof to you of how having spirit of dignity is clearly the key to development. When we told you the example of Myanmar, and even though they have been colonized by the Dutch Indies and have been, gained independence from that, but then unfortunately, once again, they have been toppled down by their own regime. Their response is just saying, "Oh, Myanmar are already doing something to this, and what we gave to you of like having the spirit of bamboo runting is not going to overcome under our side either." But we already give you an example of South Korea and China, who has clearly become a really great nation by having the dignity and spirit that brings you into a nation that don't let anything topple down their standing as a nation, right? But then Georgia's response to this is saying that, oh, China has the socialist and is a communist state, so they are not able to criticize like their own heroes, and that's the reason why they're like being a dictatorship or whatnot. You cannot imply something like this. This is not a debate of whether or not which kind of ideology is the best and for a nation, right? That's out of the debate. That's a counterfactual. But notice that they did not also engage on our part under South Korea again. Exactly when you want to say this that, oh, China is being the dictatorship towards the people, we say they still also stand good as a nation, because if you really want to go on that left-wing mindset of the westernized, centralized kind of ideology, we say, okay, we play charitable and play on your best case and say that, okay, that China is being dictatorship towards the people and cannot criticize their own people. Look at how Taiwan and Hong Kong, who has been separated from China for the independence, because they have that mindset of dignity back in the day when they realized that the heroes who has been who gained independence from separating the colonization and oppression from China. Notice also that they dismissed the idea when we told you about South Korea, no engagement towards this, right? And then when and all finished all of the rebuttals towards opening government. I'm getting to, which means that none of the arguments stand in this debate. I'm going to move on into two of the issues that I'm going to talk in my speech. Right. Firstly, I'm going to talk about how I'm going to talk more of the extension of dignity from my leader for opposition. Second, I'm going to talk furthermore on progression and development. Right now, let's get into my first issue towards regarding my leader of opposition extension of dignity. My leader of opposition clearly give you a sense that we don't want to shift the focus under this Dutch colonial history into clinical discourse upon corporate evil. But if then any proposition bench, if they want to come here, we'll give you a disclaimer and preempt that we also still think that they are perceived that these enemies are, or like past colonizers are perceived as the same, right? Even though it's upon like a clinical discourse, it isn't like it isn't biased or whatsoever, since it's like having that emotion. We say that the Dutch and this still builds perception to Dutch and these perception that Dutch are still our enemies. When my leader of opposition told you of how we credit heroes and we actually give credit to those people who deserve the remembrance, we say this is something that is moral and a benefit to us. If any of the benches in this debate don't think this as a benefit, we say we still bring out the best of our nation and try to develop them, which is I'm going to move on into progression and development, right? Because of this spirit and the spirit of our nation keep happening, there's an incentive for our people to do things even though they still have no rightful solution to this. My leader of opposition have told you multiple times that this like learning and having clinical discourse of this kind of education is not enough either. We told you that these kind of references are not enough, and it is not relevant in the future. Exactly. how the prime minister said that, oh, things are relevant in the past and you should not glorificate things. But then realize how their deputy prime minister tried to claim this a bit and also say that, oh, we should also learn about the past. So this is some sort of contradicting that I see here. But under our side, we're still going to be really charitable and say that even if you really need more resources and researches and to build a better nation, we say again, my LO has already told you that history is not only written in one book, right? Just even though like Indonesia has like only a POV on their side, we say that if you really do have the incentive and spirit to do better for your nation, you really want to do, you really are able to go out of your way and read books on the libraries of other authors writing down the history of Dutch Indies and actually learn the pattern, even though it is not going to be relevant anymore because times have changed and it's not going to be a good future reference. As do we say that as side opposition, we oppose this motion today. Very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Time spent by the second speaker of the opening opposition is 7 minutes 28 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes 28 seconds. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, sir. Next, to open the case from the closing government, I would like to invite the first speaker of the closing government, Mr. Moza. Time is yours.
I'm audible?
Yes.
Okay. I prefer the POI for you to unmute yourself. So POI through audio, but please do not do it in an aggressive way. Please be gentle and gender. I don't have any preferred gender pronouns. I will start my speech. In 3, 2, 1. OG explained on like revering hero and independence somewhat bad. It creates patriotic, etc., right? Under our side, we say that it is not inherently bad, right? They somehow believe that we shouldn't praise the hero, right? What differentiates us and from OG is that first, they only represent the harms and benefits. Second, they never explain to you how it will affect the students or like how basically these people will how these people will react to this, right? But thirdly, they never give you any likelihood on why their bench is guaranteed to spread the awareness. But fourthly, they never play in their worst case scenario, right? And because of that, we say that closing government is way more better than OG, right? But then onto the opening oppositions, right? Notice, panels, do notice that opening oppositions fail to acknowledge the current issues and how there are exploitative corporations, these evil corporations in the very first place, right? Notice that both of their speakers never explain and never actually give us any alternative towards on how, for example, we will increase the awareness upon the exploitative issues that is still happening within the status quo, right? But moving on to my speech, right? Firstly, I will explain my stances, mechanizations, and picturizations as we can see that this is still really gray on-site opening government, right? So firstly, on our stances, it's simple and obvious. We want a better society where the knowledge of what's important is actually there and the history is not forgotten. But secondly, we want a better future ahead for recent and our and next generations, right? What is our mechanizations on the clear picturizations and mechanizations on what is actually happening on the rest of the house? Is that first, exactly what the motion said, we want and believe we must shift the focus of the discourse to the evil corporate that the Dutch have done to Indonesia. But secondly, shifting the focus as in we should talk more about the corporate, for example, in a lecture about history in school, universities, etc., right? And it means that under Reserve the House, it will actually be normalized, and the likelihood of increasing the awareness will be much higher under Reserve the House, right? Picturizations under Reserve the House is at first within the current world and society in Indonesia. We can see like each time we talk about Dutch, it's always how like our heroes are fighting against them, or like how good our heroes are so that we can finally be free after like 350 or so years, right? We say that we want to shift the focus of this, right? But secondly, we do not regret the happiness and the euphoria on the memory on like how Indonesia is finally being independent. We did not regret the idea of our beloved heroes who sacrificed almost everything for Indonesia, right? Different on site OG that picturizing them as these heroes are somewhat are not there for us to actually be to memorize and to memorize, right? So I will talk about two things on my speech. Firstly, how it is important to increase the awareness of the still existing exploitative evil corporations. But secondly, why focusing on heroes and our independence is no longer the urgency to set as the main focus. Right. On to my first substantive on how it is important to increase the awareness of the still existing exploitative evil corporations. Right. What does this clinical discourse on corporate evil looks like, right? It looks like this like massive or rich or like foreign corporations who exploit local labors, local resources, etc., right? And do not give any benefits to the locals, aka like self-oriented corporations, right? This Dutch colonial type of exploitation that is still happening up until now, right? So we said, what is the problem? We said there's actually a lot of people that are unaware, right? Are unaware on these exploitative issues within the status quo, right? We said it is important to be aware for this kind of problem, right? They are seedlings. There are the successors of Indonesia, right? In the near future, and one of them like will also work in that certain company, and of course they do not want to be exploited. What does this lead to? This leads to scenarios under Reserve the House. Is that A, they are aware? Three scenarios under Reserve the House. Is that A, they are aware of this and could speak up against the government or represent their generations to oppose this kind of like quote unquote Dutch colonial type of exploitation via demonstration, for instances, via presentations or parliament, etc., leading to changing and strengthening the policies to oppose the evil corporate, right? Like raising their taxes, force them to give a proper wage to the workers and stuff, right? But even if it's not true, we said this is more important for these universities or like high school or like basically the discourse in general to know that Indonesia is still affected by that kind of exploitation, right? That this type of problem is true and has affected Indonesia for years, leading them to create a social discussion about these problems, whether it's on group discussion, social media articles, etc., right? But see, the moment we shift the focus, it means that it will be more, as I mentioned before, it will be more normalized, right? It means that the amount of discussion will be increased. It means that the uncovered, the untouched material about the exploitative issues will be disclosed because of the increasing amount of discussion, right? But then the question, the awareness is still achievable in other way, right? Responses to this is that first, we said it is still exclusive under Reserve the House. This is topic being brought over and over again as an Indonesian students, for example, or as an Indonesian citizen, for example. This means all people from all levels will be exposed to the issues, unlike any other way where people who major in business and management, only people who major in business and management, for instances, who will know the exploitative manner, what are the exploitative manners are, right? But secondly, we said that there's no, the moment you did not shift the focus, there's no actually incentive for these people to actually search in articles, for example, specifically on the exploitative issues, right? But then the question might shift to, it will create a discourse on how extreme the Dutch to Indonesia is, right? We say, if you really want to look at what the Dutch has done to us, it is not about how many people and heroes they are killed, right? It's about the cause of all the problems, right? The root of the problems that affected Indonesia for hundreds of years, right? It's obviously them being exploitative to our citizens, right? But then the concern about, what about the heroes then? We say that under Reserve the House, there is still an event to memorize their effort and their sacrifices, like Hari Pahlawan, for example, like 17 Agustus, for example, or just like the weekly Monday ceremony. These things still exist under Reserve the House. If people want to learn more articles and history books are also not done under Reserve the House, right? Again, we did not regret these Pahlawan or our own independence. We say that the focus should not be there, right? But on to my second point of argument, why focusing on heroes and our independence is no longer the urgency to set the main focus, right? We say that first, there are other ways to learn from like films, articles, etc., right? But secondly, there are no one ever explained about this exploitation as urgencies, right? Because corporate evil, for example, they have the power to restrict the kind of content, for instance, because they are basically a massive corporations. But even if they are not able to restrict, there's no such films or movies that are really explained about exploitative issues, for example, compared to what we can get under Reserve the House when we shift the focus, right? But then we also say that the issues is still going on, right? We say this is urgent because the issues is still going on. There's still a lot of exploitations happening within the status quo, right? Rights of people are harmed up until today. This is what is urgent, and that is why we want to increase the awareness, right? We say sites CG very proud to propose.
Time spent by the first speaker of the closing government is 7 minutes 20 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes 20 seconds. Next, to open the case from the closing opposition, I would like to invite the speaker of the closing opposition, Ms. Marcella. Time is yours.
I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The honorable advisors and all the members of the House. I'm standing here as a member of opposition from closing opposition. First of all, I would like to mention about what the government side said earlier about how could we picturize about what happened in past. It's actually because of that we couldn't say that newspaper is not what we need because we have to open our eyes. We have to open our eyes to see what exactly happened to our people in past. During colonial rule, Dutch forces regularly committed to cities and Indonesian civilians were tortured, raped, and executed. At school, we learned a thing or two things about the nature of colonialism, but that is precisely the question. How much do we know about how our ancestors lived through those 300 years when we know that they were killed, tortured, raped, suppressed, enslaved at home, sold as slaves abroad, forced into hard labor, sent to exile, treated as non-civil citizens on their own land, and stripped of all dignity as human beings. What about those 300 years from the time the Netherlands started impose control over global spice supplies from Indonesia by violent means? We know of the 1,621 killings of almost the entire population of 40,000 people on Banda Island, but we know little of the intervening years between the massacre and the war for independence in 1945 till 1949. No, thank you. We know something about Diponegoro War, and we get a glimpse of Dutch abuses from the 1,860 novel marks Havelaar by Dutch author Edward Douwes Dekker. We hardly get any picture of life under Dutch colonialism from writers in the Balai Pustaka generation from 1920 onward. As good as the writings are considered a classic Indonesian literature, they take the colonial system as given under a standard plea because of the censorship. No, thank you. We got some ideas from the writings of Sukarno and Franz, but they are clouded with rhetoric of independence. We get far more from Pramudia Anantatur, who had not lived through the era, but was able to recreate the atmosphere vividly around Minke. The main character of his bureaucratic novels. From his novel only take us to the period between the end of the 19th century and the first. No, thank you. And the first. No, thank you. And the first of the 20th century. Dutch literature of the 17th, 18th, and 19th century is filled with clarification of how their tiny country is, how their tiny country ruled the world to become the wealthiest nation on the earth. The VOC, the Dutch East Indies company, has been touted as the first truly multinational company. Grossly absent is the no thank you is the cruelty and brutality as the Netherlands uh, says control of the spice trade and the transatlantic slave trade. These are not in their collective memory. Dutch cons, cons, consciousness and understanding of the colonial history is for them to deal with. If they have not come to terms with their ugly past, it's the problem. They are in good company. We may have taken some of the best from our colonial manners, but we must have also inherited some of the worst Dutch character traits without understanding our own history of colonial subjugation. We may never know who we really are, and we owe it to ourselves to learn about the truth. And the points of what I try to say is here are about we must break no thank you the chain of able to ensure that no error is passed on to protect future generation. Everyone is a fighter and has an equal share in upholding justice. No thank you. Holding a common perception about how to deal with crime is more important than fighting alone to uphold justice. When justice has been upheld, it will not be a problem if the enforcers of justice later die, because the legacy of justice will remain standing regardless of time and age. The most the most effective way to confront and defeat evil and injustice is to build a clear understanding of evil and injustice itself. Law can be fought, but the concept of truth and justice is higher than real law, because this concept lives in our soul and body of as a good human being and will not die, because it will always be passed down from generation to generation. We fought to stop the coverage of Dutch colonial history, which had to shift its focus away from the struggle of independence because their struggle did not deserve to be sidelined. This must be and will always be a priority and center point of our country. That's why we strongly believe that this house should not stand this motion about this house. Believe that Indonesian coverage of Dutch colonial history must shift its focus from liberating hero and independence efforts into that of clinical research on corporate evil. Thank you.
Time spent by the first speaker of the closing opposition, 6 minutes 45 seconds. I repeat, 6 minutes 45 seconds. Next, to close the case from the closing government, I would like to invite the second speaker of the closing government. Ms. Nayara, time is yours.
Am I audible? Test?
Yes.
Oh yeah, okay. Cool.
Your voice is a little bit low, Nay.
Oh yeah. Test. Okay.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay. My POI preference, you guys can just unmute yourself. Gender pronoun she, her. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. If opening bench is gray, then we say the CO is invisible. We never get their urgencies and problems that they need to fix and the solution of it, right? We never hear any point of picturization of what they will do and what they believe that why is this glorifying your heroes is important and such, right? No explicit analysis on their bench, right? I'm going to do 3 things. I'm going to compare my my bench to OG, to OO, and to CO lastly, right? So I'm going to compare to our bench to OG what makes us better and what makes our awareness argument is differentiate from them and better from them. But before move on, notice that panels that cite OG, even if you buy all of the only harms and benefits that they give to you, they never explain an explicit picturization on like of it, right? Rather they explain it with a nuanced, flowery words that actually not solving the main problem of the urgency themselves, right? And then secondly, they never give any explanation of how this will affect the students and how will the students react, right? Their whole explanation is basically based on quote-unquote close conscious. But what is the close conscious that they want to actually represent in this debate? They never explain it, right? They never explain what will affect the student and what will the students will do or react from this, right? Rather than my member already told you an explicit step-by-step on this, why is this likely and what the students will likely to do with this focus by lectures in history, and etc., right? Meanwhile, we notice the importance we give explicit outcomes, right? Like that these students can do demonstration and representation because of the likelihood of the normalized awareness that we give from schools or from universities, right? But even if that's wrong, we play on our worst case scenario, which, by the way, OG never play on their worst case scenario, right? We say that even if the worst case that these students will not do demonstration, if the students not represent their generations in the parliament, for example, in the worst case, we said that at least it's raised a social discussion, whether in a group discussion, whether in social media, for etc., that will raise the untouched, unsolvable type of exploitation that this Dutch type exploitation have never been aware in the status quo that we want to solve, right? Notice that now, because of side OG never played in their worst case and never give us explicit, we champion under that analysis, right? All of these, then why our argument about race and awareness is more effectively and more likelihood? Because first, they only present you the harm and the benefits, right? Even if we buy it, they never give you any likelihood, right? And then they say that, people will be aware, but they never what they will do with their awareness. Their bench never give an explicit statement about this, right? On our side, we give you explicit statement of what will be happen will affect these students who are focusing to learn this type of history from the Dutch colonial type of exploitation, right? But then secondly, and that's the tipping point and ultimate wake up why we are better from OG, right? But let's compare our side from OO, right? They say that, there are other alternatives from different books, like for different alternatives, like books from Dutch history as well else. Notice that no students wants to buy a books in Gramedia of history from a Dutch historian and read it as a hobby, right? But secondly, on our side, when this focus is mandatory and we normalize it, even the students, like it or not, they will knew this anyway. And why is this important? We prove to you why is this important, because this type of problems will affect them in students who will like search jobs in the near future, right? This type of problem will affect the jobs policies in like omnibus law, for example, right? But then secondly, they said that, we took dignity of our heroes and etc. Statue of heroes still happen under our side of the house, right? That doesn't mean if we focus on Dutch type of exploitation, that doesn't mean that Heroes National Day atau Hari Pahlawan Nasional will be abolished under our side of the house, right? Secondly, we focus this because this is the important thing, the crucial thing on the status quo that we want to solve, right? Because this is important, because this is affecting if they want to search a job, or even if they live in a near area with the corporate evil, right? Notice that, and then secondly, notice that the reason why Indonesia heroes want to fight this Dutch is because they want to push the Dutch out from Indonesia. Exactly, and our bench gives sufficient from that, right? On our side, these students will more likely to do this because the normalization and the affection effect that they get from schools, right? Rather on opposition side, first, they never knew that, we should continue this heroes fight the heroes that fight against Dutch, which means in the status quo means that they want to speak against this corporation, right? On opposition side, it will less likely to be happen. Why? Because they will think that, oh, our Indonesia heroes in the last centuries already solved it. Now our obligation is just to glorify them and not speaking against of those corporate evil that is being haunting Indonesia for decades for hundreds of decades until now, right? So then, why on our side, this importance and this likelihood is really noticed, and it is really crucial to notice by you panels, because this is the ultimate analysis for all of the harm and benefits from side government will actually happen, right? In order for that harms benefits will happen, they have to play on our explanation on why this is important and why the likelihood of this normalization and spreading the awareness from the students is going to be happen either way in our side of the house, right? But then second, but then lastly, let's compare to the compare our side to CO, right? Notice that they give you a questionable analysis, and they first they say that, oh, heroes have fight from Indonesia from blah 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 centuries and etc., right? But there no further elaboration on this and why this harmful and etc. They never give you any solution. But then secondly, they said that again, they say that, oh, this kind of corporation is bad, but then again, no further elaboration on why this harmful and why they should focus on this glorifying this heroes from Indonesia, right? I'm sorry, but their questionable harm stances cannot win onto this debate, right? On our side, we give you a clear stances and we give you an explicit explanation why it is important. And if you want to buy all the benefits that side OG wants, they have to play in our mechanism and our picturization to be happening, right? On our side, our bench, we are the stepping stone for all the benefits that we provide to you, a more explicit benefits on how this will affect the students, how to react. On our side, we notice this, and we never give you any questionable harm stances, right? And we also play in a worst case scenario, meaning that this is the ultimate wake up that on my speech that win side CG. Very proud to on this bench.
Time spent by the second speaker of the closing government is 7 minutes 20 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes 20 seconds. Next, to close the case from the closing opposition, I would like to invite the second speaker of the closing opposition. Ms. Debbie, time is yours.
Good afternoon, I'm opposition with closing opposition. The Honorable, the educator, and all the participants. First, I would like to mention about the closing government say that there is no people or young generation can buy book about history. So that it is not a young generation who don't enjoy to buy history book, such as Nadia Omara. She is a YouTuber who clarified the history in Indonesia and the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, we don't agree with this motion because it is no longer under the Dutch territory. Therefore, freedom fighters is fully the right Indonesia to promote independence means fully authorized. There should not be any intervention at all from other countries, including the ex-colonial owners. The Netherlands Indonesia deserves to claim those in memory of being heroes by each other as the living nations. Different perceptions on heroes should be respected are freedom fighters during the Dutch colony. Indonesia and the Netherlands are now fully two independent nations that should restore their sovereignty. The long colonial period in Indonesia has influenced the way of life of Indonesians. For example, the attitude of traitors to the nations, corruption, nepotism, pollution is a legacy of this era, and at this time, the consequences are still felt and therefore must be stopped if necessary. With the law not being able to stop it, the most effective effective thing is to build a common perception of how evil it is if it continues. So, without understanding our own history of colonial subjugation, we will never know who we really are. We owe it to ourselves to learn about the truth. So, we are as young Indonesian generation deserve to claim those in memory of being heroes. Harassment and operation of civil society from the arbitrary legal systems, taking natural research to be brought to colonial countries, giving low wages to indigenous workers and conversely high wages to non-native workers, discrimination to get education, civil society is trying not to go to school, and prohibition of gathering associations. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention.
Time spent by the second speaker of the closing opposition is 2 minutes 56 seconds. I repeat, 2 minutes 56 seconds. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, because this is the silent round, so there will be no announcement for this round. And the announcement will be announced at the closing ceremony of the 9th English week. So we invite the participant to go back to the main chamber.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Zain. Thank you, everyone.
Good luck.